Going yet? Okay, I guess we'll talk some more because obviously there's a lot to unpack, a lot of hot takes to plop out. Luckily, we'll have Trump's entire second and third and fourth and fifth terms to really dig in. And a lot of what we talk about today will be explored in larger videos in the future. For now, we want to focus on the fact that a large portion of America wanted this. America got together and voted to not only have Donald Trump be in charge, but for the entire country to swing red so as to give him absolutely zero resistance to do whatever he wants, which is, explicitly, a lot of cruel and bad things that will objectively hurt the country, including political retribution. They voted for that. He told them what it was, and they said, yes, please. They wanted him more than they wanted the other person. I forget their name, but you remember them. I think they drove a bus. There were wheels involved. Anyway, we're going to ask a series of questions that we suspect a lot of you are also thinking, starting with the most obvious and pressing. Are people stupid? Great question. Surprisingly, the answer is mostly no. The American people aren't stupid. I mean, some people are stupid. And while a lot of them are apparently pretty racist and sexist, or at the very least, don't care that they voted for a very racist and sexist guy, it's not exclusively that either. People are, however, generally very ignorant when it comes to politics. Like, a lot of us, including we here at the Shody, often forget that most people aren't weird political nerds. And I think after Trump's first victory, a lot of people just assumed that Americans, when faced with what was presented as an aberration, would become more involved. But it turns out that Trump did the opposite of that, at least according to the data we have. Partly because he wasn't so much an aberration, but rather an extension of and permission slip for the Republican Party. But by the end of his first term, the majority of political posts on Twitter, an already niche sample, came from just 10% of users. So that's a fraction of people. Meanwhile, most people at this time were either casual followers of politics or completely checked out. By the end of 2023 and at the start of the election, everyone was exhausted by politics and had a generally negative view of both candidates. And hey, they weren't wrong. We can argue until we're blue in our sexy faces that the reason politics got more exhausting is because of Trump, but Americans weren't paying enough attention to listen, because people are busy. They have kids to raise, dogs to walk, cats to be dismissive of them. They work all day at the office or dildo factory or Lockheed Martin or all three. They watch Grey's Anatomy. There are over 20 seasons of that show, and I have no idea what it's about. I assume the genitals of some guy named Grey. To be clear, I'm not being dismissive of these hardworking dildo factory workers obsessed with a fictional man's penis, but rather I'm being dismissive of me. Of us, of political junkies who can oftentimes forget that most people aren't as plugged in, and in fact want nothing more than to tune it out. It's Joey Pants in The Matrix, eating the steak, ignorance, bliss, etc. You've seen the film. So that's all to say that kissing babies apparently still works in this country. Not literally, babies are disgusting, but it turns out that if a mediocre or perhaps terrible white dude in a suit simply speaks with authority and acts like he has a plan or the concept of a plan, he can bullshit his way to win an election. Obviously, there's more to it, and we will get to all of that. Nothing is ever one thing. But, for example, it seems like most Americans don't know anything about how the economy works. Why would they? It's money and math. That's two of the worst things ever. You can explain all you want that the rate of inflation is going down, or that the president doesn't control gas prices, or that certain decisions might look good but create a sense of false prosperity. But all people see is what's in front of them right now. And right now, everyone around the world is unhappy with inflation and taking that out on the incumbent leader. In a way, there's not much to be learned about losing to Donald Trump because this is currently just a worldwide phenomenon. That people are unhappy about inflation and incumbent leaders are getting voted out. It could have been Lindsey Graham up there. All you have to say to most people is that the other person, the one in charge now, is why things are expensive. and you have a plan to help the economy, and that the plan is good. Even if, get this, the plan is actually very bad.
The National Retail Federation estimates new tariffs could cost Americans billions, raising the price of a $50 pair of sneakers as high as $64, a $40 toaster to $52, a $2,000 mattress set up to $2,190. A CNBC analysis says among the most vulnerable to tariffs could include retailers like Five Below, Wayfair, and Dollar Tree, brands like Yeti and Crocs, and of course the customer.
How fucking stupid is it that voters who specifically said they were very concerned about inflation voted for a man that explicitly said he would do a thing that would make prices go up? That's not my opinion. That's just what tariffs will do. They are taxes put on imports into the country that the business importing the goods would pay, and would then pass that increase onto the consumer in order to still make a profit. Trump is proposing a 60% tariff on imports from China, so like all the stuff he sells, and a 20% tariff on imports from everywhere else. And so, for example, if Walmart wants to sell the next PlayStation console, they have to purchase a bunch from Japan. Not to mention that a lot of video game consoles are manufactured in China. In fact, this isn't the first time Trump tried to do these tariffs that would directly hurt the gaming industry. So if Trump does finally implement his tariffs, Walmart will have to pay way more for those PlayStations and would in turn have to sell them to us for an estimated $1,000. So why would Americans vote for a guy who wants to impose tariffs that would cost them nearly $80 billion a year? And not just vote for him, but specifically support tariffs? It's probably because they don't know what tariffs are. And it seems that no one explained it to them well enough. Take this with a grain of libertarian think tank salt. But when the Cato Institute asked 2,000 people if they supported tariffs on blue jeans, they said yes, so long as they didn't have to pay more for the jeans. That's like saying you support railing cocaine off of Santa's red hard so long as you can still get a good night's sleep for church in the morning. This is just one of many examples of people voting directly against their self-interest. The Teamsters, if you recall, refused to endorse Harris or anyone, which is wild. But I guess it's a hard choice for them. On one side, there's Biden and Harris, who literally bailed out their pensions back in 2022. And on the other side, there's Trump, who has literally supported firing striking workers and whose administration repeatedly went after unions and will now likely continue to do that. Don't get me wrong, Biden also did some bullshit and then tried to fix that bullshit. But the choice here is still pretty darn clear. Like, you would think that the deal we have with our government is very simple. If politicians do good things, we will continue to keep them in office. We're their boss, after all, and a good boss recognizes and rewards good work. But what we're learning is that this apparently isn't true anymore. We have broken that contract, which might be one of the most disheartening things I've ever said out loud. And I've said a lot of words. There's a disconnect, one that we've known about for a while, but perhaps underestimated. Remember how some Americans were against Obamacare but for the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare? There is a long history of people seemingly voting against their best interests because of ignorance. Much like how there were states and voters that chose to protect abortion rights and still voted for the guy who endangered them. There is going to be a long and exhausting examination of these split-ticket Trump voters in this country. AOC has already started reaching out to them because there are people who voted for her and Trump somehow.
If you voted for Donald Trump and me, or if you voted for Donald Trump and voted Democratic down ballot, I would really love to hear from you.
Good idea. I hope she runs for president in the future, assuming that's still possible to do. She will win. Even if you don't like her, I'm sorry, folks, she's gonna be a president one day. So while a lot of the answers she got varied, a common thread was that both she and Trump felt real and were seen as outsiders from the establishment. And so, never mind that Trump definitely isn't those things. That's what people perceive him to